Cool. We should be good to go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We got Bill Brennan here today with Goosehead Insurance. And as you might have read in the email, he is a great friend, great guy, big Notre Dame fan. Don't hold that against him. But he is an absolute expert in the insurance industry. He's actually personally saved my family, members of my family, and people here at the office a ton of money in time by not switching to Geico and shopping him. So, with that being said, I'm gonna hand it over to him here, and he's gonna talk about current issues and stuff that people are running into in regards to insurance.
Awesome.
Bill?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Just a little kind of give you a little backstory what we do. So I own an agency through a brokerage called Goosehead Insurance, based out of Texas. It's the big thing that they give me is access to carriers, and I have about almost 80 right now. I will probably, hopefully, in the next 2 to 3 years, be up closer to 100 as we continue to vet carriers and try to bring in more products for people. So we do offer a wide variety of products, home, obviously, that's what we talk a lot about most. But, we all offer auto, renters, flood insurance, property dwelling for landlords, stuff like that. Flood insurance comes in the big for real estate folks. If you hear of properties in a flood zone, don't be scared. We can help. There's a lot of times where it's not that bad. With the options that we have about 6 or 7 private flood carriers. But really the goal today is to kind of talk about like what we're seeing in the insurance world right now. So this is probably one of the toughest times that we've seen in the insurance market. There's a lot of people that have been doing this for 30, 40 years, have said that they have never seen anything like this. And it's becoming more challenging for folks when they're buying a home. And that's kind of what I want you guys to just be conscious of. And then obviously I'm always available. I'm going to show you what the carriers are doing, what they're using to try to, I don't want to say not bring in business, but the carriers are currently kind of really restricting what they're trying to do. And just because a property is currently insured with Travelers, like, hey, maybe your client's having a hard time getting insurance. Well, hey, the current people have Travelers. Call Travelers. Well, I can assure you, most likely, it's not going to qualify under Travelers' current guidelines. And Travelers have severely restricted business, and this is just one example. But if you have a roof that's over 15 years old, Travelers doesn't want it. There's not an option. Like they won't. You can't have a conversation with them about it, and it comes down to, hey, this roof was installed in 2008. Too bad. And they're just not interested. So these are things that you guys don't need to be the insurance agent, but these are things that you need to be kind of aware of as your clients are looking to put an offer in on a house, and that the roof is 20 years old. That maybe they actually have they're bringing a trampoline with them, and they have some dog breeds that maybe be on a restricted dog breed list. And those are the type of things. What I say is I have just about 80 carriers, and I call it the reverse funnel, right? So you have a roof that's 20 years old, you pull that out, 50 carriers go dropping out. That means they're not available. You add in, a different type of, dog breed or a swimming pool or a trampoline and these other risk factors, you're now stuck to like 1 or 2 carriers. And then you hope everything else goes well. And you're also kind of stuck into what that premium ends up looking like. Okay. And insurance has gotten tremendously expensive. I tell people, when I first started, $500, $600 premiums, I was like, yeah, that's a pretty high premium, right? Now if I get 800, I'm like, woohoo, that's amazing. Like, how do I even get that? So the average premiums are jumping up and down. So one of the biggest things that we're running into, obviously, a lot of times in this real estate market, you're seeing inspections being waived. You're getting seller's disclosures that look like they are filled out by a 2-year-old with crayons, and just nobody wants to answer anything. The big hot button that I run into is unknown roof age. So um, the carriers, there is just no exceptions to that. So, and yes, it can be unknown. Maybe the person that lived there died, and they lived there for 50 years or whatever that might be. But there has at that point the carriers are looking for a roof certification. They're looking for information of, hey, how long was this roof installed? And the home inspectors, they go a different route where they say, hey, I think there's 5 years left, right? Or I think there's 3 years left, or whatever their terminology usually is. And that can be helpful to me, right? Because I'll take a good educated guess. But I can't put in, there's no way for me to put in unknown, right? The carriers will require us to put, yeah, the home was built in 1970. They want us to put 1970 if they say unknown. And well, that makes it automatically ineligible, right? So those are some things that we're facing, a little bit behind the scenes. And what we're seeing then after the fact is the inspections of what the carriers are coming out and doing. And I'm going to share another screen. Let me figure out how I do this. So I'm going to stop share, and then I'm going to share one more screen because this is what the carriers are using after the fact. Can you guys see this roof report? It shows like a picture of a roof.
No.
Brooks?
It
No?
just looks black. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why it says you are sharing that screen. Interesting.
Oh,
All
now
right.
I see it.
Now I
Nice.
see something.
Okay.
1880.
Yeah, that's it.
Long. Okay.
Perfect. So this is what carriers are now using as part of their process. And I'll give you a scenario I ran into yesterday with a flat roof. Um, Roof was installed in 2021. Yeah, with flat roofs, you almost always have to call in to get approval. And they use these type of reports. There's this company's called Better View. This one's called Nearmap. And I'll kind of show you guys both of them. But what yesterday happened is roof was 2021. I'm like, oh, this is going to be an easy one, no brainer. And here, they were looking at ponding on the roof, on the flat roof, using satellite imaging, and they can go back to when these images were captured. And if there's water showing in certain areas, the carriers look at that as that's going to be a roof that's going to give them a problem, and it's going to leak. So even though it was a 3-year-old roof, I was denied a policy because of this imaging that they're using, because they're like I keep saying, very, very restrictive. So all of these homes are assigned basically a roof score. So for those that maybe cheer for Penn State, 50 out of 100 is not a good score. Okay. So so that's something where the carriers are going to look at us and say, hey, we're going to need some more information on this. In this example, this roof was 14 years old. All right. So this roof was installed in 2010. So this roof is already showing significant wear, significant issues that an insurance company is looking at. And I really have to go into part of like selling, this is for the shed, but I have to go in and talk to them about why I think this carrier or why this product belongs with them. And they'll look at, different types of things. And so if you tell them the roof was put on in 2018, they'll go back to 2018 on satellite imaging, and then they'll go to 2017. If the roof looks the same, they'll most likely come out and cancel the policy because there was some misrepresentation on the application, right? So these are some things that we are running into behind the scenes. And, your job is to get your client taken care of, get them to the closing table, live happily ever after, so on and so forth. our job is to prevent them from getting a letter 15, 20 days after closing saying, hey, your policy is going to be canceled because of your roof, and you have 30 days to replace it. So now your client just bought this house and now they're facing, 10, 15, $20,000 for a new roof. Or they're going to face cancellation. And sure, can they go somewhere else to get insurance? Yes, but most likely they're going to run into issues again and again. And so what my job is to try to kind of help with that up front and get a little bit more pre-approvals and things along those lines. So things I tell folks to kind of be conscious of is as you're working with folks, if you're on the listing side, having detailed information of the roof. Roof is not the only thing, but I can tell you it is really the biggest thing that they are focusing on right now because that's their number one loss in Pennsylvania. It accounts for 50% of losses in the state. So anything over, so 20 years is really kind of what I tell people. At 20 years, I start really having some issues, right? So I have about 4 carriers that will take it up to 25. But of those 4, 2 of them are very, very restrictive. Very restrictive of they'll use these roof reports. They'll verify what the score looks like. They'll ask a lot of questions. They'll want to know more information. And it's not about like talking to your client about replacing a roof. It's just about coming up with a plan in case something comes up during that process. Having a roof certification done, right? So having a roofer come out and say, hey, this roof is in good condition, right? Here's our report with their information. That can be very helpful to an insurance agent, right? So I can use that to go to underwriting and say, hey, it's all pretty what your satellite imaging says, but here's a report from a real roofer that says that this roof, and with pictures, that this roof is in good condition. A big thing that they look at is the staining. Having a company come out and doing a soft wash and getting rid of that staining. As I say, you can kind of trick the insurance companies, right? It can make an old roof look pretty, right? If it's 27 years old, it doesn't matter because there's just not anybody. Well, I shouldn't say not anybody. There's very few carriers that will take it. But if you have a 23-year-old roof, have it soft wash for a couple $100, that could really help with the inspection process and everything along those lines, and help the carriers, keep the insurance in place for folks. When you're on the buying side, I know I always say Brooks laughs when I say this. I watch enough $1 million listing to know what you guys do for a living. Okay. And that's a joke. But, so, what I tell people is you making sure the insurance contingency is checked because it's not a slam dunk anymore. It's not easy to get insurance on properties that have roofs anything past 15 years. It's really just becomes restrictive. So having that for your client and, being able to explore those options. If they go under contract, have them reach out to an insurance agent, myself, anybody that you trust. I'm always happy to do that the minute they go under contract, because before you deliver that earnest money check, see if they can get insurance. Like make sure that's not going to be an issue, because that is something that can help you save the client some aggravation, some time, and things along those lines. Those are some things that we have tried to help folks, like having them do that almost immediately, the day they get under contract. And then this is can you see the near map one now with like Altoona address? Okay. So, and this is just another company that does this. 3 years ago, this technology was awful. It is continually getting better and better as things come along. And as you can see, the tile shingle discoloration. So that's where I talk about like the soft washing could really help, those type of things, zinc staining, they talk a lot about that. And so, yeah, so those are kind of like some tidbits that, and just, you don't have to know everything about your client, but, having an understanding that, hey, if you have an 18-year-old roof, they have a couple pets, the house has a swimming pool, those are things that are going to help or hurt, kind of what carrier they could end up with. So you just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence up front. So that's the most thing that I wanted to kind of review just about this kind of stuff. Brooks, anything else you'd like me to cover, or I'm always happy to answer a million questions.
No, I think this was great. A lot of useful information, and yeah, obviously roofs are the biggest problem, it seems like, right now in the insurance world. Uncle Tim, I know on some of our high-end clients, you get necked down to very few options when you go past, I think it's the $1 million price point. So I don't know if we want to kind of chat about that or bring that up to make people aware, but you're certainly limited with your options at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you get over. So, an agency has, so because of the brokerage I own an agency through, we get a little more leeway with carriers and what's called binding authority, right? What you can bind up to without underwriting approval. Most carriers, it's up to $1 million for me. I have a couple that are like 750, 800,000, somewhere in that ballpark. And that doesn't go by what you guys are, what the sale price is, right? That's market value. That's what the market drives. It goes by replacement cost. So think anything over 4,000 square feet above ground is where you could start to have an issue with limiting of carriers, like, limitation of carriers. So that usually gets close to that $1 million mark. When you're doing, it's usually around $250 a square foot, give or take some pennies here or there, for rebuild. So that is something that you can run into quite often, for sure. But I mean, there's still plenty of options, and a lot of times it's just a conversation with an underwriter. So as long as you're able to go in there and the property looks great, you can usually get it approved, but it's an extra couple steps.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a house and the roof is 18 or 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding insurance companies coming back and then canceling the policies for properties that already, I'm not talking about a new sale. I'm talking about like my particular house. I've lived in it going on 19 years now.
Yep.
Are insurance companies coming back and dropping policies that are 19 years old?
Yes. Yeah. So we definitely have seen that more and more. Okay. And one of the things that we're seeing, so a big win for the consumer, right? So insurance companies, I'll name drop a couple of them, right? Nationwide was very guilty of this. A couple smaller carriers, Plymouth Rock. Carriers were only using this satellite imaging, okay? And it's good. Like I said, it's good. It's not perfect, right? This particular house, this carrier, what was this? I forget what the score was, 56 or something like that. This particular house is fine with this carrier, right? And you look at or 45, you look at the roof report, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, they're never going to prove this. They went out and inspected the property, came back great. Okay. So what happened is a few months ago, the Pennsylvania Department of Insurance basically went back to carriers that canceled policies only using satellite imaging, and basically said, you can't do this, or you're going to get in trouble, fined, whatever that might look like. So they can use this as a tool, but if they're going to do something, they have to send out an inspector to actually physically inspect the property. Okay. Back to what I said earlier about, if you have a seller getting a roof certification, right? So having a roofer coming out, filling out a report saying, hey, this report is in really good condition, or roof is in very good condition, and here's the report. I've been able to go back to underwriting and fight those cancellations. Okay. So getting the information saying, hey, this roof is in good shape, potentially having it soft wash, that has been something that has helped a lot, right? Those type of things really will help if you get that, what I call the nasty gram from the insurance company. There are ways to combat that. It's not always the easiest. Sometimes they're just trying to get away from properties, but it is something that you can easily win.
Is this just for asphalt shingle roofs, or is this for metal roofs and rubber roofs also?
Yeah, so flat roofs are, I mean, legitimately, I have 3 carriers, potentially 4, that will take a flat roof right now. And it has to be, I mean, it has to be less than 8 years old. Flat roofs are, when I say 50% of all losses in Pennsylvania are roofs, flat roofs are a large cause of that. So carriers just, nobody wants them. And that lady, I went to Travelers yesterday, and it was a 3-year-old roof, and they denied it. Like, I have one other option for her, and they won't look at the ponding, but I talked to her about it. I said, look, you got to address that, right? So flat roofs and metal roofs, if you see I'll always use I'm not great at construction. I always tell people it's not my skill set. But with metal roofs, having them painted and sealed properly every 5-10 years, I think, is what they recommend. When that red starts shining through, that's an issue for carriers. So they will force you to do something at that point. They will force an action item at that point. Metal roofs, you can usually get a little more than 25 years with a carrier. So I can usually go to, like, a Safeco will usually take them up to 40 years if they're in good shape. So I can go past the 25 years with metal roofs, but they really have to look pretty, I guess is the best way for me to word it.
Is there any possibility that they will insure the property but exclude the roof?
So yes, sometimes hard getting a mortgage with that, right?
Okay.
So there are some carriers that will exclude the roof. There are also situations where if the roof is old and the purchaser plans to replace the roof within 30 days, I can usually get that approved through several carriers with proof of replacement coming, right? So like a signed contract or anything along those lines. So if they're saying, hey, I'm moving in, I'm replacing the roof immediately, hey, that's an option, right? And I can go to a carrier and I can get them to approve that as long as they have a signed contract, and we can kind of work through that for sure. But there are a couple carriers that will let you exclude the roof. It usually doesn't fly. I mean, that's usually I see it on a cash deal, because most carriers will require a wind hail type thing and roof coverage, and it usually doesn't. It's not been flying on that end a lot. Not every time.
Bill,
Yes.
do solar panels on the roof influence the insurance?
Does solar panels on the roof include insurance?
Influence the insurance.
Yeah. So solar panels can, right? There are some carriers, depending on how many solar panels there are. Usually with solar panels, depending on when they were installed, they usually have some sort of a roof report that went along with that, because the solar companies usually will not install solar panels unless the roof is in good condition. So that can usually sometimes help. There are some carriers that do not, if it's over 50% of the roof is filled with solar panels, they won't accept it, right? So they just and I don't really know, I don't have a good answer on why. I always say that's one of the things. I always feel like that roof's in good shape because it's being shielded from everything. But a lot of the carriers just don't like it if it's, I shouldn't say a lot. There are several that just don't like the whole roof being covered in solar panels. But, it depends. Some carriers will add it to their replacement cost estimator. Some carriers say, hey, if it gets damaged from hail, we're not paying for it. You got to figure that out. So it's just a matter of having that conversation, me having that conversation with the client or their insurance agent when you're presenting the policy.
I have a quick question.
Of course,
Is there
yes.
a percentage that we can give our buyers to say, okay, you're buying a $300,000 house and roughly everything being norm, your insurance is going to be 4% of the purchase price or 5%. So we're having a lot of problems with figures coming in on insurance, and buyers are finding out the insurance are much more expensive than they thought. And the difference between an above ground pool and an in-ground pool, is there much of a difference in pricing of the insurance?
Yeah. Good question. So Leslie, I used to be real good at giving people numbers, right? I used to be able to spot it. Like I could pick something and say, hey, I think this is going to come in at about $1,000 or whatever.
Mhm.
It has drastically changed so much in the last 6 to 8 months. There's just no good guess anymore. And I wish I could give you a better answer. I have a lender that uses a certain percentage of the purchase price, and I'd be happy to ask him and tell you what that was. He's usually fairly close, but the factors that are really hurting people right now are if their financial score, so think credit score, is lower, their insurance is going to be significantly higher right now than what it used to be. It's just having way more of an impact, because what the carriers are finding is the worse the financial score, the higher the claims rates. So they're not trying to bring in that type of client. So they'll say, sure, we'll offer you insurance, but you're going to pay a lot. Now I have a couple carriers that don't rate financial score. So knowing that, like, if I know they have worse score, I just go to those carriers first. Swimming pools. So it really becomes an eligibility thing. Diving boards and slides can actually make a house ineligible with certain carriers. Obviously, if it's in ground and unfenced, please don't call me. That's impossible. I mean, it's nearly. I've gotten one insured one time in my career over several thousand policies, and it was because it was literally on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere, and there was no property anywhere near, and so I was able to negotiate that deal. But so as long as it's fenced or has a locking gate if it's above ground, most companies just surcharge a swimming pool a little bit, but it's nothing crazy. Yeah, like 40, 50, $60 a year. That's usually what it costs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill,
Yeah.
let's assume that a house has approximately 3,000 square feet, but you also have 1,200 square feet finished heated and cooled in the basement.
Yes, sir.
How does that affect your $4,000 factor?
Yeah. So every carrier, when you go in, so when we go into a carrier site and we start trying to set up the insurance policy, we have to do what's called a replacement cost estimator. Okay. And so you put in the above ground square footage, and then you put down, hey, basement's finished at 75, 80%, whatever that is. And it spits out a number. So usually 3,000 square feet, we'll just assume, I'm just going to try to do some quick math on my phone here. If I can pull it up here, 3,000 times 2, I'll just do 225, makes about 675,000, replacement cost. Add 1,200, you're usually looking at about $50 to $100 a square foot for basement refinishing. From what a carrier will look at, not not necessarily a perfect number, but it was what a carrier will look at. So you could factor probably another $120,000 on top of that, as a rough guesstimate. So, but yeah, usually those, it usually end up around 750 to 800,000. I just did one yesterday, very similar to what you just described. So, and I think it came out to 760 something as replacement cost.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a comment. I have a home, my own home has flat roofs. And recently I tried to shop insurance and we have it's a healthy tree, but a very large old sycamore tree that is in the front yard. And when I was trying to shop, I couldn't find a better deal because I found that a couple of the insurance carriers wouldn't take it because of this large tree. I guess they were afraid it might fall in the home even though it's healthy.
Yeah, actually, so here's what I'm actually looking on this roof report. I believe it's this carrier, Better View, or this company, Better View, offers. They'll do like what tree coverage, percentage. And what I always tell people, if it's over 15%, it generally becomes very hard to find a carrier that will take that. You know. Usually depending now, Jim, was it overhanging like the whole house, or was it just like some branches that could be trimmed back or something along those lines? Because usually, oh, right here, overhang. If you can see on the page I have sharing, that will be that there's no trees hanging over this house. But if there were, this would be yellow or red, and it would give a percentage.
Well, to answer your question, it's a very old tree. It's like I said, it's healthy. I'd
Yeah.
say maybe it's 150, 200 feet tall.
Gotcha.
So yes, definitely
Yeah.
there were branches
Yeah.
hanging over. Yeah.
Definitely a focus of carriers right now for sure. You know, not 6-7 years ago, that wasn't even a thought. I mean, I shouldn't say it wasn't a thought process, but I can tell you it wasn't a underwriting guideline. It definitely has become more and more prevalent. Not every carrier though, Jim. I just think you're running into, with flat roofs, you're running into your limitation of carriers. So I always tell people I can fix one or two things. You come at me with a on-fence swimming pool and a pit bull jumping on a trampoline next to it, I probably gonna not be your guy, right? You know, and that's kind of what you start adding in factors. It becomes really hard.
I assume they must have found it by the satellite because they never
100%.
sent anybody out, you know.
Yeah, almost every carrier is using this now. Almost, I mean, they are all eyeing this up, and you know, they're just trying to get their losses under control. So.
Do we expect any of these hurricanes to affect insurance prices across the country or only for those specific areas?
Yeah, I mean, poor Florida. I mean, obviously it'll have like some ripple effect, but it's not really gonna kill us elsewhere. You know, if we could, you know, vote to remove Philadelphia and its surrounding counties from the state of Pennsylvania and make it its own state, we would be fine. You know, that's unfortunately a lot of our losses have come around the 6 counties around Philadelphia. And that's what's causing. So if you think about the pressure of flat roofs, right? Almost, you know, city of Philadelphia. I mean, how many, you know, stable roofs are there? 2, you know, so it's a lot of the losses are coming from those areas, which is really what's driving our premiums up, you know, in the rest of the state of Pennsylvania. So you know, all in all, have some effect, but nothing earth shattering. It's just you know, the way insurance works is a lot of the carriers purchase reinsurance. The reinsurance market is really just kind of tapped out right now, because of, you know, the hurricanes and stuff like that. So it will have some effect, but it is the overall picture of insurance is getting a lot better. You know, we are starting to see carriers that are Liberty Mutual, so we represent Safeco, which is a Liberty Mutual company. Like, they're telling us that they're going to, start to turn a little bit and want more business, probably first quarter next year. Progressive is actively going after business. In the auto world, they're not really quite there yet with home, but they're close. Travelers is most likely going to be making a strong push for new business, and that's good for the consumers. It's good for you guys, right? So, these roof reports will still mean something, but I might be able to get something pushed through if it was borderline. Whereas now they're like, yeah, we're not there yet. So, so I really do think second quarter of next year we'll start to see a little bit more relief. There are a few big carriers in Pennsylvania that have applied for some incredible rate increases in the state. One of them was denied a very large. They have to, rates are regulated by the state. They have to apply for what they want to try to bring on as a rate increase, and there was a certain carrier that applied for a 65% rate increase. They were denied that, which is good for the consumer, but that still means they're going to get something pushed through. So that usually means 20-30% a lot of cases.
Anybody else have any questions for Bill?
Conlon Brooks, based on what you heard with Bill today, what are your thoughts on the insurance contingency in the agreement of sale that a lot of times our agents waive?
I think it's definitely useful in the right scenario to put that in there. Obviously, it depends, as Jim Goldsmith would say, on the situation and how much competition you have and what that looks like to the seller. Obviously, a seller's looking at competing offers, and the one with the least amount of contingencies typically is at the top of their list. So, it kind of depends. But to protect your buyer, by all means, yeah, it's smart to put that in there.
Yep.
Especially with the ages of these roofs now. Although if there's still a mortgage being obtained and you can't get insurance and the lender requires insurance, it could fall back to the financing contingency. So, but for those contracts that we're sending through that are cash deals, it's just something to be thinking of when you're writing these deals. We used to play a little game years ago where the average agent wasn't reviewing these contracts specifically enough that if you were waiving the home inspection, you could always slide in an insurance contingency in the event that you wanted to find a little quick out for the buyer. But now it sounds to me like these insurance contingencies could be useful. Number one, what's the price of insurance going to cost? As Diane and some of the other people have mentioned, I mean, these rates can be out of hand and really throw off your numbers with whether or not somebody qualifies or can't qualify for a mortgage, depending upon what the insurance cost is going to be. I think that's probably why Diane was wondering. I think the rule of thumb, Diane, years ago, and now I'm talking a long time ago, was like, wasn't it $2 or 2% of the sale price?
Yeah.
We used to use as a round number.
Used to use 3 to 5%,
Yeah.
I'm seeing it's not good enough anymore.
So now we don't even know what to use because we don't know what all the conditions are going to be with regards to the house. So just some things to think about. I think, Bill, you did a great job, even though you're a Notre Dame fan. Very knowledgeable about the insurance industry and definitely enlightened us to what's happening within the marketplace and what's happening with insurance costs and what to be worried about when it comes to the age of the roofs and what we could be experiencing. So the last thing we want to do as we're recommending these sales and processing and trying to get to settlement is delay on the insurance costs. I think that's something that once we get a property under contract, we need to either recommend that they call one of our recommended insurance agents like Bill, or we need to have them get a hold of their own insurance agency or get multiple bids from their own end Bill.
Yeah.
But it's something we shouldn't wait to the end to do. It's something we should do up front. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I, the minute they go under contract, have them reaching out to whoever that is, right? And have them get that as soon as possible. That is probably the biggest thing, because it's not impossible to get insurance, but it really might help.
In reference to a Bill, one last question with
Yeah.
regards to insurance, in reference to a property that might be in a flood zone or possible flood zone, how do you guys handle that as far as elevation certificates and things like that?
So, elevation certificates. So, all right. So if it is a PHFA mortgage, I always say tread very carefully when you're looking at any property in a flood zone. PHFA has loosened some of their restrictions, but it's not perfect. Really and truly, elevation certs really aren't necessary that much anymore. It can help with the cost, but it's a gamble. Usually, I have 7 private flood carriers, I believe, 7, maybe 8. What doesn't matter. We can find a very competitive option for folks. And I usually say, before you go out and show the property, reach out. I'll get you a flood quote. And that way it saves you either the trip out and say, hey, that's going to be 10 grand or that's going to be $500, right? And that's could be a competitive advantage for you as a real estate agent. You could be more competitive in your offer because flood insurance is only going to be $500. And that happens quite more often than you think. So I'm usually able to find a really competitive option for flood insurance in most cases. So,
okay.
But yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Bill at this time?
Bill?
Yeah.
What about commercial properties?
So Goosehead, so I always tell people we're really good at personal lines insurance. We aren't great at commercial. We just don't have the options. So I always say, I recommend, I have a person I recommend that's similar to me, that has like 40, 50 commercial carriers and really can specialize in. If you're looking at a 5-6 unit habitational like apartment building or a mixed use, like I might be able to help you out. I have a couple great carriers for that, but it really becomes very what I say is it becomes very specialized, and it's just not there's just not, I don't have enough carriers to be able to always find the right market for it. And I'd rather have you to somebody who has the access to 40, 50 carriers like I do for the personal lines.
And Bill, while you're here, is there any other insurance programs that you offer that maybe our agents should be aware of as far as health insurance or any other type of insurance, car insurance? How are your rates with that?
Yeah, so we offer, we offer, really pretty much anything, auto, umbrella, landlord. So if you have people who have investment properties, that is something that we've found. I have several clients that have 40, 50 properties that we insure at a time. That's also a market that is changing a lot, but carriers are still being very active in that market. If the properties are in good condition. Obviously toys, so boats, RVs, motorcycles, we are very good at those. Really, there's a few carriers. Progressive is the class leader when it comes to toys, and things along those lines. Health insurance, we don't do. I do recommend, I have a person I recommend for that. And she's helped out a lot of my clients and stuff. That's just a market I'm licensed in it, but I don't want to play in it. And then we also offer life insurance as well. So.
Okay. So if your goal this coming year is to cut expenses, maybe give Bill a call and let him requote some of your policies for you and see if he can save you a little bit of money.
And especially as realtors, because if your agent doesn't currently have it set up that you use it as business use, that can become an issue, God forbid, if there is a claim. I've seen it happen to somebody who switched over to me. They had an issue with their previous agent and company, and so keep that in mind. Love to help.
The other thing to remember too is, Bill, for those agents that have had a home and let's say they've owned it for 10+ years, maybe even 5+ years, the market has significantly changed and the values have significantly increased. It's probably a good idea to make contact with your insurance agent and make sure you have the proper coverages for the replacement costs of your existing homes.
So true. Very, very good. Solid point there. Solid point. So very much.
Anything else, Brooksy?
No, I think it was a great call, Bill. Thank you again for your time. We always appreciate you. I will send out the recap to everybody, and if you want to reach out to Bill, I'll have his contact information in there, and you guys can get in touch.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.
All right.
See you guys. Take care.
Brooks, is there anything else we need to talk about? Anything coming up that Kathy, what about the
Aaron,
pumpkin
my
contest?
mom, do you want to talk about the pumpkin carving contest and some of that stuff?
Since we're getting to the end of that time period.
Is Aaron on there? If
No,
not,
she's
I can
covered
talk about it.
in the
So
text messages.
Oh, that's right. So I've taken the information that Aaron sent us and I started texting past clients and just friends, putting it out there to your people. You can copy and paste it or send it out of your photos. And that's a quick opener to, converse with some of your past clients.
Jim, I have a good question.
Yeah.
We went on a listing last night, and before we went out on the listing, I was getting all the paperwork together. And Craig reminded me, which I forgot, but the new MLS disclosure that we need to discuss with our clients, our sellers, about if they want their property in Bright and how much they're willing to offer. I noticed Craig told me it was just in the global forms on zip forms, but it wasn't on our individual when you go in there. Brooks, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it should be in the global.
It's in global, but it's not in the other one.
Yeah,
Personal.
well, when you create your own, that's not something I have any control or access to. So if you have a individual packet that you created with your information in it, specific to you, you're going to have to add that to your template. Again, if that's something you did on your end, but I added to both the Remax global buyer and listing package.
Okay, so in other words, too, what you're saying, Diane, is if you're not using the global package and you're specifically picking out the forms, you would have to go from the MLS category library to the Remax forms. Or no, where would that would be under the?
It wasn't in the Remax form, so
Yeah, it would be in the Bright.
No, it's in Bright
Right.
MLS forms,
which I think is the top one, right? If you're picking, it's the out of the categories, Aaron, is it Bright the top one?
I think it's Bright, PAR, and Remax, but it would be in Bright because it's specifically their form.
Yeah, Colin or Brooks, can somebody share their screen real quick? Log into
I found it global, but I didn't find it when I went into the library for Remax on zip.
yeah,
So
it wouldn't be in our library, it'll be in Bright MLS's library.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if we can show the screen, if anybody can log on, we can show you where to find that.
So
Okay, here, let's just show you real quick where to find it.
Give me 1 second, I gotta hide the tiles here. All right, so let's see, let's open up this one.
If you go to all forms.
Documents. And then if you add a doc, add a form, Bright MLS. And it's this
okay, right
Bright
there.
MLS form for subscribers. Now,
So
what
in
you're
that
talking
library,
now, what you're talking about though is under templates.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
So I don't get to see as you can tell, I don't get to see your personalized template that you might have created for yourself. I see the ones that I created for myself, but then I have the global listing package and the global buyer's package. So it's in both those templates, but if you're doing one for yourself, you're going to want to do the same thing where you go into your template and then you add a document and you just add that form from the Bright MLS library into your template, and it will be there every single time when you apply that template to a new transaction.
I got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for us today? Hopefully you enjoyed that call. I thought it was very informative, especially with what's happening within the insurance industry, knowing that need to be cognizant of the insurance clause now in our contracts. And, you know, if you're going and you're listing a property that has a roof that's over 15 years old, you might want to make sure, or if you're selling a house to a buyer that has a roof that's over 15 years old, you might want to make sure you check with an insurance agent to make sure they are willing to provide insurance on the property. But other than that, Brooks, thank you for the call and the topic, and having Bill join us. Dad, is there anything else you'd like to say? I see you're on the call. We can't see you, but we could hear you if you unmute.
Okay,
There we go.
yeah, I thought it was a great call. His recommendation of other people shows that he has our best interests at heart, which I thought was excellent. So, you know, there could be a chance to use him. There's some great information there. I'm I'm seeing through the whole situation. Diane, kudos on having your own template at hand so that your forms are easy to use. I certainly recommend everybody do that. Other than that, have a great day.
All right, guys, we will see or talk to you soon.